I think we'll find that I'm right and you're wrong. I cannot do it. I'm not the little engine. I thought he could. Here we begin in Book 3 then with the invocation of the Muse for a second time. This is also different. We have not had this in previous epics. There's a second invocation. In fact, there are 4 invocations of the Muse in Paradise Lost. So there's one here in Book 3, but there was one in Book 1. There's one here again in Book 3. We'll find that there's another one, we're not going to read it, in Book 7. And then finally, there's a 4th and final one in Book 9, which we will read. 4 invocations of the Muse. And he does it for different reasons. The first one is obviously at the outset, he's announcing his whole epic ambition, this theme and so forth, so that's the invocation, that's obvious. Why is he doing it here? Well, here he's going to go and talk about heaven. Now, this is not where the gods of the ancient world reside, where he's going to talk about Zeus and Hera or whatever. He's going to talk about the one true God who no man has ever seen. And he's going to describe things and conversations that he's purely speculating on. But on the other hand, he as a Christian believes that God does exist, and furthermore, he has the problem of representing God. How can you do this without idolatry? Misrepresenting God. If he's going to give God language and let him speak, then he has the very great danger of misrepresenting him. So God, historically in Christian literature, plays, God rarely speaks in the literature because of the presumption, foolish creaturely assumption on the artist to represent and let God speak, like in the shack, where it becomes a woman and there are 3 women or something like that in the shack. It's something like that. It's following a very bad precedent to some degree set by Milton. Yes?
Would you say that these invocations of the Muse are genuine prayers by Milton? Or if it's just part of the literary style?
Well, it's not the precedent, because again he's doing something unprecedented here. He is presenting it as a prayer, and you don't really get that same sense when you read Homer or Virgil, that there's a sense of awe and the difficulty of doing this and how dare he do that. You don't see that in the pagan writers. They're talking about the gods, but they're not fearful of misrepresenting them. Whereas here, he expresses the impossibility of doing what he's just about to do. So here, right at the outset, hail, holy light, offspring of heaven firstborn, or of the eternal, co-eternal being, may I express thee unblamed, since God is light, and never but in unapproached light dwelt from eternity, dwelt then in thee, bright effluence of bright essence in create, or hearest thou rather pure ethereal stream? But this is his problem. How do I even express who you are? Because he says, God is light, and never but in unapproached light dwelt from eternity. So no one has seen God, and not even him, but he's going to talk about these things. And he's going to give God language to describe what's happening, and yet he's expressing, and you said, is it a prayer? There's an element of fear in the manner in which he's expressing something that no one else would dare do. Is that sufficient to solve the problem? At least he's expressing his awareness of the mortal danger of expressing God or giving God language. And why does he do this? He says, well, that thee I revisit now, 13, with bolder wing. Escape the Stygian pool, though long detained in that obscure sojourn, while in my flight through utter and through middle darkness, born with other notes than to the Orphean lyre I sung of chaos and eternal light. Night, rather, taught by the heavenly Muse to venture down the dark descent and up to reascend, though hard and rare. Thee, but thou, so thee I revisit safe and feel thy sovereign vital lamp. But thou revisits not these eyes. and roll in vain, to find thy piercing ray and find no dawn. So thick a drop serene hath quenched their orbs, or dim suffusion veiled. So what is he referring to here now? He's referring to the sun, actually. The sun as a symbol of the true light of the true God. But the sun is not God, but it's something like that. It's something you can't even look at because it's blinding. On the other hand, Milton is blind. So he's looking, the light which is touching his eyes but is actually not blinding, because he's already blind. For everyone else, they look at the light is what allows them to see. For Milton, the light does not allow him to see. It's also, he says that he revisits them safe and feels the sovereign vital lamp, so he can feel the heat on his eyes, I guess, but he's not affected with blindness by the light, which he would be otherwise. And then adds this, but thou revisits not these eyes that roll in vain to find thy piercing ray, and find no dawn. Yet not the more seaside to wander where the muses haunt, clear spring or shady grove or sunny hill, smit with the love of sacred song, but chief thee, Zion, and the flowery brooks beneath that wash thy hallowed feet and warbling flow. Nightly I visit, or sometimes forget those other two equaled with me in fate. So were I equaled with them in renown, blind Thamyris and blind Maeonides. Maeonides is Homer, who is also blind, interestingly. So two famous precedents of epic poets, Thamyris and Maeonides, and further adds to this Tiresias and Phineas, prophets who are also blind. Now he's citing precedent. And this is, again, characteristic of the epic, is to cite famous precedents in which you're following. And he is following their precedent in the sense that he's writing an epic, but also in the sense that he's claiming prophetic insight. So this is the reason why he's referring both to epic poets and to prophets. There's a prophetic vision which he's pronouncing here. And thus with the year seasons return, but not to me returns day, or the sweet approach of even or morn, or sight of vernal bloom, or summer's rose, or flocks, or herds, or human face divine. But cloud instead and ever-during dark surrounds me from the cheerful ways of men cut off, and for the book of knowledge fair, presented with a universal blank. Now what is the book of knowledge fair? Do you know what the book of knowledge is?
Is it the Bible?
No.
It's a book that God's written.
It's the natural world. There are two books. There's the scriptures. That's the book of grace. But then there's the book of nature. The natural created order which God has created and testifies to God's power. Paul speaks of it in Romans 1. So there are two books. There's the natural order of things, which can be seen as God's handiwork. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky showeth forth his hand. And then there's the book of grace, the Bible. But in this case, he can no longer look at that book of knowledge. He can't see the world around him. It doesn't speak to him because he can't see it. However, because he has read the Bible and because he has the gift of the Holy Spirit, he knows what God's like without seeing anything. And that's going to help him here, because he's going to describe something that can't be seen. So having no ability to see isn't a problem. Of nature's works to me expunged and raised, and wisdom at one entrance quite shut out. That's one means of wisdom, is looking at the world and the way it operates. He can't observe it anymore. There's no means of wisdom that way. But he says, so much the rather thou celestial light. Now he's not referring to the sun anymore. The celestial light, the light of heaven, shine inward, and the mind through all her powers irradiate. There in my mind, not the physical eyes, in my mind there plant eyes. all mist from thence purge and disperse, that I may see and tell of things invisible to mortal sight. So his blindness is no barrier to this. He has as much capacity to see things that are invisible as everyone has who has physical eyes, if not perhaps more so. Maybe this is why he has lost his sight. So he needed the Muse because he was going to describe hell, which is a terrible place to behold. Now he needs the Muse to tell of places that no eye can see. But he's more confident there.